What is up, everybody? Today we're going to take a drive in the E30, and on our drive we are going to talk about the 4 different generations of BMW that I've owned, what I liked about each car, the problems that I had with each car, and which ones to stay away from. All that in today's episode. My name is Ryan. This is Project Race Car. Let's get into it. Come on. Woo! Greta has not been started in a while. That was a little rough. So as some of you may know, Greta is my recent project car that I picked up, and she is a 1991 BMW E30. It's a 318 IS model, which is the 4-cylinder, 1.8 liter, and it is the M42 is the engine code. So they produce these things in the E30s and the E36s, and it's a very reliable engine. This one has 282,000 miles on it. Same engine, same transmission, and it runs perfectly fine. It's a beautiful day. It's like 72 degrees, and you can't beat it in Austin. It's so much better than the 0 degrees that I just came from Colorado. So we got the windows down. We are enjoying the weather, and we're gonna grab some gas. Now, my dream didn't start with the E30. The E30 kind of grew on me, but my first car, the one that I got in high school, the one that I learned how to drive stick on, was a 2000 BMW E46. It was a 328i, so it had the 2.8 liter, made like 205 horsepower or whatever it was. So it was a decent car. It was the rear-wheel drive version, and it was beautiful. I loved it. So I learned how to drive stick, and it's where I learned how to work on a lot of cars, and it's also where I fell in love with the E30s. So this car was a hand-me-down from my brother, who was he went into the Air Force, and so he sold the car to me, and the car was great. It really was pretty reliable. But the issue is that those cooling systems on the E46s, they do not hold up. Within like a 2-year span, I've replaced those like 3 times. The other common issue is the window regulators just go out like nothing in that car. So, and it was a little bit of just tedious, annoying stuff. The nice one is that it was a nice enough car to be really good in high school, and it was reliable enough to get me to classes, and it did the job of what it was meant to do. It also got like 28 miles to the gallon, which was pretty decent, and had enough power to kick out the rear tires and have a little bit of fun with and beat on. So my brother, he got it when he was in high school and then gave it to me. So it lasted through 2 high schoolers, and it was still kicking and everything when we got rid of it. So we had the car for like 6.5 years, and it was just a solid car. If you can own an E46, I always recommend doing it, but I would recommend to upgrade the cooling system. It's up at 363 for a gallon of gas. Good. So all in all, the E46 was actually a really good car, and it made me make a jump to going back to the E30, because I wanted to find an E30, and because it grew on me, and so I was like, you know what, I might as well do it now. Right after I got out of high school, I went ahead and bought my first car without being a hand-me-down, and it was a 1991 BMW 325i, and it was a convertible, red, just like it actually started off as black, but it was black and then with red underneath, so they painted it and used Plasti Dip. So I peeled off all the Plasti Dip and worked on the car like it was my first car. when I purchased this car. I was straight out of high school and I was working a minimum wage job, making like 12 bucks an hour. It was decent, but it did not pay the race car bills. And if any of you guys know, race cars get really, really expensive very quickly. So naturally I could not mod the car as much as I wanted to. So I couldn't quite live the race car dream that I really wanted to. And so it really got me thinking, what car do I actually want, you know? And I originally thought, me being right out of high school, I originally thought that a convertible was better because it means less weight. And everybody knows that less weight means faster. But what's funny is that convertibles are normally like 500 pounds more because of all the convertible system. And they have to re-strengthen the chassis because the chassis isn't structurally sound, right? So anyways, I learned a lot from this car, from purchasing this car, that I didn't want a convertible. Like that's what I learned from that car. I went ahead and stopped just to give the Greta a break, and we're just gonna enjoy some of the weather. But so what I also learned from this car is I started doing stuff like the fuel injectors. I started taking off the intake manifold. I started doing regular maintenance stuff. And this car, the E30, actually taught me a lot about old, simple car mechanics, right? It taught me that a lot of this stuff is a lot easier than you think it is. Everything looks very complicated in an engine bay, but it's really, really simple. So this car actually helped me out a lot. And so I basically fixed it up and sold it. I made a little bit of a profit, which was nice. So right at the time that I sold this car, I realized that I wanted to do something with turbos, right? Turbos are always the best way to make power. So I thought about turboing the E46 or the E30 maybe, or something. And then I realized that it might just be easier to get an already turboed car. This brings us to me buying my 2007 BMW 335i. And this thing was beautiful. It had every single spec that I wanted. It was the two-door, it had the manual. Also, all the cars that I've purchased are manuals. But it had the manual, it had the peanut butter interior, it was full bolt-on and making like 420 horsepower. So the thing was an absolute unit. I have tons of clips on it, and this is where I actually started my YouTube channel. I started making videos with this car, which was really, really cool, and it was really nice to, you know, start working on the YouTube and start working on cars. But what happened with this one is it broke on me, like all of the 335s do. This car had the notorious N54 motor in it, which is one of the most problematic motors that BMW has ever made, and that's right behind the M5 motor. If you guys know anything about that, it is also atrocious. So I went ahead and I knew what I was getting into. I knew that these were problematic motors, but at the same time, I was naive and I just, you know, I went with it, right? And so I drove right past all the red flags and purchased this car. So I got a really good deal on it, and again, it was everything that I wanted. So it had upgraded turbos, it was full bolt-on, so it had all the things done to it. But anyways, I started messing with the tuning, started messing with the stuff, got really into like working on the car and putting, you know, all my money, all of the money into this car. And then about a year into owning the car, the thing started sputtering, and through a check engine light started having issues, and I ended up pulling off the valve cover and found that the valve stem wasn't sealing properly. So it was letting in air when there shouldn't have been air in there. So it was causing this misfire and this rattling, and the car wouldn't even idle correctly. So I was trying to be a responsible adult, and so I decided that it'd be good to replace the valve stem, and I didn't want to take off the head. So what I did is I pulled the engine and I brought the engine to a mechanic shop. in hopes that they would know what they were doing because I didn't, right? I was trying to be responsible. You know, I can pull the engine, I can do basic stuff, I can do clutch work, but I've never touched the inside of an engine before. So I decided that they should do this because BMW has complicated engines. After fighting this guy tooth and nail, it took him 5 months to remove the head and reseat the stems and then put it back together. It took him 5 months to do this. So meanwhile, the engine is already down. It took me, 2 weeks to already pull the engine. So the car was down for 6 months and I hadn't even seen the engine. So I finally got it back, put it back together in another week, and then the car wasn't running correctly. So I started just going through my head and just trying to figure out what I did wrong. And then after a year and a half of the thing being down, I ended up finally figuring out that the 2 timing sprockets, when the guy put the engine back together, were swapped. So I went through trying to figure out what was wrong with the N54, and I went down rabbit holes, and just tons and tons of rabbit holes of what's wrong with this car. I replaced injectors and the spark plugs and the coil packs and all these different things. I went through every single, just throwing parts at the car, and nothing was working. So then I finally figured it out. And again, this was the fastest car that I had owned, and I decided that, you know what, I need to go back to the roots. I need to go back and I need to buy an E30. I need to buy the dream car. So I made sure that I got exactly what I wanted. I wanted a 2-door E30 manual, and I wanted the coupe. I wanted the hard top. So that's what I got, and that is what we are sitting in. This is my absolute dream car. I'm building it from scratch, and we're just going for it. So there's tons of more stuff that I need to do on this car. But I've already replaced the steering wheel and the suspension, and I replaced the interior and did the carpet on it, which is still holding up fantastic. So I've done a lot of work to this car, and I still want to do a lot more because this is a unit. I love this car. Okay, I had to move because I was in the sun for too long. I'm gonna get sunburnt because I'm ginger. Anyway, so I finally got the car that I was looking for, right? And then I thought to myself, you know what? I should buy another BMW because I love BMW so much. I should buy a project one that I can flip. So I decided that it'd be a good idea to find a completely torn down and broken E36 M3. Now, the E36 M3 had I think the best interior, but at the same time, I really enjoyed the E92 interior. So the E36 was by far the most broken BMW that I had taken together. It was the most clapped out, absolutely destroyed, but it was still in decent condition. So if you guys have been watching for a little while, you guys might have seen the E36 content. And that was more recent. And the E36s are interesting because they were very much ahead of their time. They tried to do a lot of technology in the early 90s, and they started doing just a lot of new stuff. So I think that the E36 chassis was just a little bit too ahead of its time in terms of testing products out, testing things out, trying new things. So the difference between the E30 and the E36 chassis is just 100% different. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to drive the E36, so I don't quite know how the E36 chassis drives, and I'd love to own another one that's maybe not so clapped out. For me, I enjoyed every single car, and every single car has brought me to owning this one. It's prepared me for owning this one and doing jobs like an engine swap, like a turbo build, that I really want to get into. Sometimes you have to treat cars, if they're really problematic, you have to treat them as a learning experience. So the E92 really taught me that technology is really makes cars a lot more difficult to work on. Yes, they're easy to problem solve, but once you start adding more moving parts, more things can go wrong. So trying to find certain things wrong with that car made it very difficult to solve simple problems. The E46 taught me that, you know, a simple car that is not modified can run really well. And it can do the job and get everything done. The E46 platform was a really solid build, just like platform in general. The only thing that lacks on that is the actual power. Turboing those things you're working with really limited space, and I think that if you were looking for a daily driver, the E46 would be a very, very good platform. The E36 taught me to not buy other people's project cars that aren't running. That thing was such a pain to get back together. I literally got the car in 4 or 5 boxes of bolts. So everything was just torn apart. There was no exhaust, there was nothing on the car. So I had to piece together every single thing and try to get it was also a manual swap, so I had to try to get all the parts together and swapped out, and it was just the biggest pain of my life. So that one was really rough, and it taught me to not buy project cars. And that brings us to the E30. This thing has taught me that I love older cars. This thing is so easy to work on. It's just dented enough to not have to worry about the paint. It's in really, really good condition, and it just runs. It's simple, it works, and it goes. It starts up every time. I'm not worried about, you know, paint and scratches and any of that, at least until I get the paint done. But I'm not worried about it too much. So this thing has really made me love the old cars because they are just more simple. And again, just really simple door locks and door hinges, and just, it all works. And it works really well. So until I really destroy this car and put an engine swap in it and turbo it and do all that stuff, this thing is just going to keep going and just keep working, and it's just going to be great. But if owning 4 different generations of BMWs has taught me anything, it's that you can always buy and sell cars. So you might as well just keep trying cars until something works, until you find your dream car, or until you start working towards your dream car. You can always buy, you can always sell. Things are always going to work out. So if you're unsure about a car, go ahead and buy it. Go ahead and test drive it. Go ahead and just jump in the chassis, drive it around, and, you know, things could go great. It could never have any issues, or things could go horribly wrong, but you just fix it and then move on with it. I have loved every single BMW that I've owned, and again, not all of them were perfect, but they all taught me something. But I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I just wanted to bring back some old memories, get some old memories of the cars on the YouTube channel, and I hope this helped. And if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are brand new, and until next time, my name is Ryan. This is Project Race Car. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Peace.